Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Todd Clint's SharePoint Podcast number 345, recorded live Monday, July 17th, 2017. I am your host and the namesake of Todd Clint's SharePoint Podcast, Todd Clint. And you can contact me. I am all over the internet. You can email me, Todd at toddclint.com. You can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Clint. You can follow me on Instagram at Todd Clint, though I post no pictures because I don't know what to do with Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, Todd Clint. What are the new social things these days? What are the kids doing, Shane?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I fell asleep. You got too long-winded there in the intro.
Whatever the new social media things is, I'm there at Todd Clint. Hit me up, say hello. And while you're out there, take pity on that guy, Shane Young.
Hello, folks. I am also on the internet at Shane's Cows on Twitter, though, right? Unlike that Todd Clint guy who couldn't come up with something creative, I came up with Shane's Cows.
That's because there's one Todd Clint and like 472 Shane Youngs.
There is. And then if you use my real first name, there's umpteen.
And so the funny story about this, so I remember, Shane, you and I, 8 years ago, trying to find handles for you that had the words Shane Young in them. 8 years ago, they were all gone then. I mean, there's just never been a time.
I know. I was definitely late to the Twitter game, right? If we go back in the time machine, it took me a lot longer to get on Twitter. You know, LinkedIn, I was actually one of their first, 100,000 people. I don't know why I was an early adopter on that one, but Twitter, I was really late, and YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. I took my time. And Snapchat, right? There's always Snapchat. If you guys really want to get connected to Todd Clint, add him on Snapchat and send him some pictures. Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. So I made the mistake of doing that with Shane. He has sent me any number of pictures that I can't speak of without counseling and all that kind of stuff. And I've received snaps from other people. I don't think I've ever sent one. Again, it's like Instagram. I don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't want to send pictures of my junk anywhere, and I don't know what else to do with Snapchat. I don't. Very confused. So.
Oh, good old junk mail. All right. What about, we got some production updates for these poor people?
Yep, production notes. So all the podcasts are current. Last week's came out a little late. So, foreshadowing for next week, Shane and I are going to talk about a PowerShell project we've been working on. And I was helping Shane with that. My own, a bunch of pieces of this podcast are automated with PowerShell. Not enough and not well enough. But one of them grabs the video recording from this week and then creates a project in Camtasia and does all this. It grabbed the wrong video last week when I was creating the podcast that I didn't notice. So I got the whole thing done and realized it was the video from 2 weeks ago. I had to start all over. So it was a little late coming out. But as far as I know, the video for podcast 344 is actually the one we recorded a week ago now. It was not originally. And if you were paying attention to my website, you would have noticed the wrong one come out. I had the audio all out there. It was all done. And then I was going through the video, and I can't remember what it was. I was trying to find time code somewhere. And I'm like, man, I feel like we already covered this. That's because we did. So yeah, all caught up now though, so we're good to go.
Well, and this show needs to come out extra fast, right? Dave Aykroyd apparently is putting out some work fires today, and he said, guys, I need this show out because he needs to be in the know. He wants to know what's happening right now, and we are the breaking news for him. Yeah, and for him, so I forget what his Twitter handle is, something with PowerShell.
But anyway, I assume it's because he wants to hear the horrible stories of the way that we're abusing and misusing PowerShell, and he wants that feeling of superiority that he's clearly smarter than the both of us. I assume that's the piece that he's looking for.
Yeah, at Learn PowerShell. So.
Learn PowerShell. That's what I was thinking of something else. But yes, Learn PowerShell. So I assume that's what he's missing out on. It's just that feeling of, oh my God, these guys are idiots. But we'll get this one out as quick as we can for you, Dave. Hate to leave my public waiting. So for topics, speaking of my public, last Tuesday, I think it was. Yeah, we'll call it Tuesday. I spoke at the St. Louis SharePoint user group, and I did it remotely. And that was a funny thing. So Shane blazed that trail. You did what, February?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
So, and they asked me to do it. Shane was kind of my warm-up act, and that happens all the time. I'm used to that. So I get online, and it was like a comedy of errors. every single thing that could go wrong did. So they were using Skype for Business to do it. I understand that's what they used when they did it with you also. No?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Yeah. But anyway, like it was every combination. I don't know how many times in my life I see myself remembering back that scene from Johnny Dangerously. If you haven't seen Johnny Dangerously, great movie like from the early 80s, Michael Keaton, Joe Piscopo. But it takes place during the 30s, during Prohibition, and there's this little kid that delivers newspapers, and he's standing on the corner, and like the guy comes by and throws out the newspapers, and he hits the kid in the head. And every time he hits the kid, like something happens. Like the first time he hits the kid goes deaf, and then the guy comes by again, he hits him with the nut set of newspapers. He gets his hearing back, but then he can't see. And it was just like this working with these guys. It's like, okay, I can hear them, but they can't hear me. Okay, we jiggle some stuff. Now they can hear me. I can hear them, but I can't see them anymore. We jiggle some more stuff. And we got to the point where they could hear and see me. I could hear and see them. But if they plugged in the projector, they could see me but not hear me. So I'm like holding up flashcards. Can you hear this? So we ended up getting started like 45 minutes late. It was very stressful for them. I felt very bad. And I couldn't even like tell jokes or anything because the whole problem with the audience was they couldn't hear me. That was the whole thing.
Was that really a problem for the audience or a plus for the audience?
They seemed, that was the thing. So when we finally got it finished and figured out, I couldn't hear them, but they could hear and see me. And so that was kind of the thing we settled on. So I can only assume that they were, hundreds of people in this auditorium and they were just laughing constantly. And like you'd be able to hear the light bulbs going off. I assume, since I couldn't actually hear them, I assume that's what happened. But I talked about OneDrive with them, and as far as I know, they loved it. And I talked about, all the different OneDrives there are and how that works with SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint online, the different things you can do, the different governance things. And you know how much I hate talking about governance, but I covered those things. So how you can have some kind of control over OneDrive seemed to work out pretty well.
And so did you kind of have to mix the OneDrive for business and OneDrive for pleasure and kind of like, did you have those awkward conversations with them?
I did. They all seemed old enough, and I assumed that their parents had those talks with them when they were younger. So it was all, yeah.
A server loves another server very much.
Very much, very, very committed to it. But that was good. So thanks to those guys for having me on. I had a good time. I felt bad that they were having all the technical problems. But that was good. That was a good one.
Yeah, the OneDrive stuff, it's as much as I can't stand it, right? It seems like it has a lot of legs. It seems like people are really interested, and it seems to be getting adopted at a pretty good clip. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of room there. And again, we've talked about this a bunch of times. We're going to talk about it in the next part of the podcast here. For on-prem administrators who don't know what the next phase of their career looks like, it includes the word OneDrive. There's just no way around it.
Yeah. So what do we got next here? Looks like some Azure AD fun.
Yeah, so I blogged today. I did a tech blog. There's like 2 tech blogs in like 2 weeks. I pulled something. I can't feel my mouse clicking finger. I think it pulled something. But the Azure AD folks have been cranking out some updates to Azure AD Connect, and they covered a couple of things. They actually closed some holes. I should have actually blogged this thing like 6 months ago, but I just didn't care, and then they filled this hole in, and I decided to blog it. But when you run Azure AD Connect, you can run the Express mode, the Express install, which is the thing that you and I always show, the next finish. And one of the great things that turns on is the auto upgrade for the Azure AD Connect software. So as they to trickle out these things, they get updated automatically. If you do the advanced mode, that doesn't get turned on. And there were a couple of things that you couldn't turn on if you did your install with Express mode. So like the pass-through authentication. If you did the Express mode install, you got the auto update, but you didn't get the pass-through authentication, and you couldn't turn it on afterwards. So with the version they put out last week, the week before, they pulled all those problems together. Everything's all fixed. But that got me thinking, not everybody is comfortable doing the auto upgrade stuff. Some people, have maintenance freezes at the end of the year, things like that. And so I did a blog post on how to control Azure AD Connect and its auto upgrade thing. So I showed the PowerShell commands to see how it's set now, how to change it, how to verify that it's changed, things like that, so that you can install Azure AD Connect and have some kind of control over that.
Well, that seems like something they should be able to control, because like you said, the freezes and things like that. And
yeah.
And Azure AD, I know we keep saying it, but it's becoming a part of our lives. You just need to
Yeah.
accept that talking to Azure AD is the thing you do.
Yeah.
I'm working with a new startup again, and same type of deal. They're like, well, somebody wants to do some auth stuff with us with their on-prem. I'm like, well, we're not going to do that. If they want to federate with Azure AD, we'll write our tool to federate with Azure AD. We'll meet in the middle there. And everyone kind of, once we kind of talked through logistically why that made a lot more sense than trying to take their on-prem AD and push it into our tool, they're like, this is what this is for. I'm like, yeah, I've been saying this for about 5 years now, so good job.
Yeah, and just today I was reading some blogs, and Mark Anderson, who's a developer friend of ours, was writing about how authentication fits in with his development projects, and it's the same kind of thing. Why reinvent that wheel? All the tools are there, all the management's there. Just hook into it and be done.
Yeah.
So that one's out there on my blog, toddclint.com. I believe that's /PS Azure AD upgrade, I think is the URL for that.
So many short URLs.
Yeah, PS auto upgrade AADC. I'll even put that in the chat room. Put it in the show notes, get a tattoo, all those things. But yeah, that just seems like one of those things that administrators are going to want to know, want to keep track of.
So Chewy wants to know about him as well.
Chewy, I'm sure Chewy loves me. If I ever meet Chewy, I'm sure he's just gonna love me to pieces. So last week was Microsoft Inspire, and that was the newly rebranded Worldwide Partner Conference. And not a whole bunch of things, but a couple of significant things got announced there. It started last Monday, and we didn't really talk about it because we hadn't heard everything for the week. So we're kind of going to hit a couple of those things next. One of them was Azure Stack. I feel like Azure Stack has been on the verge of coming out for a year and a half now. I feel like 2 years ago at Ignite in Chicago, I feel like it was almost like it was going to be a thing. Like the bits were just almost, and here I am a year and a half later, and I still feel like we're there.
Yeah, I don't even want to get started with that. I mean, Chewy's fired up about that too. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so Azure Stack, it's a tough one for me, right? Because 2 years ago when the first time they're like, oh yeah, Azure Stack, we'll have that out for you tomorrow. And I had just, when they had made the first announcement for it, I had just been in Redmond, sitting there with, I can't think of the guy's name, right? The guy who owned Azure for Microsoft. I sat at his table, him and 20 of his people, and we talked about it, and they kind of explained to me the reason why Azure in your own data center just would never be a thing. Like, I heard it from the mouth of God, essentially, and, the burning bush told me. And here, 2 weeks later, they're like, oh yeah, Azure Stack, it's coming, no problem. And so then I got back to work, and my boss is like, Rackspace, like, what the hell? Why aren't we ready for Azure Stack? Can we sell that yet? Where are we? And I'm like, it's not real. And so, I got in trouble for an announcement they made that was completely made up. So now 2 years later, they announced it again. It's ready.
And they've announced it 6 times between now and then. It's been, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look carefully, this announcement was even still a fake one, right? Because they're like, it'll be ready in the fall.
Yep.
What does that mean? I know what the fall is, but really?
For our non-American friends, that you might call that autumn. That's
exactly right. It's going to be available in the fall. The fall of what? 2020?
The fall of Rome. What?
Yeah. But for those of you that aren't familiar with Azure Stack, right? It's this idea that you could run Azure on-prem. So you could be able to get the IaaS portion, the PaaS portion, and not all the PaaS components, but like 5 or 6 of the most common ones. With Azure Stack, they're also going to add some of the Azure AD stuff into the mix finally. But really, Azure Stack is nothing more than kind of the next iteration, if you're familiar at all with the Azure Pack for System Center, right?
Which was something that infuriated me when they announced Azure Stack, because they're like, here's Azure Pack, which had been out and was a thing, which helped you kind of manage Azure. And then they created this thing that was very similarly named and very similar functionality.
It's the same thing for all intents and purposes, right? It's just a new wrapper around it. The big part of the update this time was, though, I guess they're going to team up with some hardware people, Dell, EMC, Cisco maybe, and let those guys are going to sell you pre-bundled hardware. So, buy these 77 servers from us. we'll ship them to your data center with it all up and running, so you don't have to do anything. They're also going to adopt a different licensing model here. So you can do the traditional, pay per core on a yearly basis, kind of the Windows licensing model we've had for a while now. But they're also going to offer you the ability to do a pay per consumption. So, right, you're buying hardware in your data center, but when you install Windows Azure Stack, damn it, on it, then what you can do is you can just choose to pay them for how many of your own VMs you're running on your own hardware. And that would be your licensing model instead of paying for just overall system licensing. So getting a, MRR model out of your on-prem hardware. I mean, God bless them if they can get it. It's genius, but...
They've done it with Hyper-V and System Center. I mean, that's the same.
So with Hyper-V and System Center today, you pay...
Oh, yeah.
VMs you make on...
I see what you're saying. No, I guess not. No, you're right.
Right, because you do the yearly per core, which is the other option for Azure Stack.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
So wild. The other thing is, I guess one of their early adopter partners is Carnival Cruise Lines. And so the way that Carnival's using it is they're actually deploying Azure Stack. I have to pause every time now. They're deploying Azure Stack to the cruise ship, right? So you get a cruise ship, you add a bunch of booze, a bunch of singers and dancers, a bunch of people from all over the world to work it, and then a bunch of drunk people. And then you add some servers, and they're going to run Azure Stack at sea. And then when they get to port, they'll plug in the big giant internet cable, and then it'll kind of sync it all back to Carnival's Azure subscription out in the cloud. And that's how they kind of plan on running that. So that's cool and weird all at the same time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and back in the SharePoint 911 days, I remember we had a couple of different customers that had nautical kind of things where they wanted to sync SharePoint on-prem with SharePoint on, SharePoint on-prem but off the grid to, so similar kind of things. And that is something that has just beguiled SharePoint and those kind of things, for the last decade. So I'll be curious if Azure Stack does a better job.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, because we also had our friends who carried very large weapons with them, right? They also were doing a lot of the SharePoint.
Yeah.
And trying to sync. And the greatest part of that, I think, for me was that they said, we've pretty much tried all the third parties. They're all terrible. We hate all of them. None of them work. I'm like, kind of what I expected. It's a very interesting one.
Yeah, so that whole replicating with places that have bad internet is a thing, and it's something people struggled with, both on the consumption side and the creating a product side for a decade. So I'll be curious if Azure Stack actually ever becomes a thing. It's a great idea. I love it. We'll see.
Yeah, we should copy these notes, put them in for the fall, whenever that is, so we have these again ready to go when it's time to talk about after their next major announcement.
So another announcement they made last week at Inspire was they introduced Microsoft 365. God bless them. So for those of us who are living and breathing this stuff, the names are confusing. But when you've got a product from Microsoft called Office 365 and a product from Microsoft called Microsoft 365, what the hell? I guess, the people that can't keep up with that probably aren't the target market for this, but I like what they're doing. I hated the name. I didn't like it at all. And so essentially what Microsoft has done is they've created this marketing term, this marketing thing called Microsoft 365. And from what I can tell, it is just a bundle. They've just taken a page from my phone and satellite TV provider's book, and they're bundling Office 365, Windows 10 licensing, and enterprise mobility and security EMS into one bundled license. So like one of the examples they give is for one of the business SKUs, those three things, Office 365, your Windows 10 license, and EMS are $20 a month per user.
Yeah, sorry, Chewy is going hog wild, so I was trying to, save you from the background barking.
Yeah.
I think the biggest disappointment for me in the whole thing, right, is the fact they didn't use something with a P, since they like, power and point and those type of things. I was really kind of annoyed that it wasn't like the Power Microsoft 365 bundle.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're marketing people. They get a name. They like the dog with a bone, right? They get that name, and they're going to hold on to it. And so,
yeah. So we'll see when this comes out. They've got 2 branches of it right now. They've got the enterprise SKUs, which are going to be based for us Office 365 SharePoint folks. It's going to be based around like an E3 subscription, and the second one E5. That's going to be the enterprise Microsoft 365 bundles, and then there's going to be a business one, which is, they've kind of got that at 500 people and fewer. That's going to have some of the business stuff. So, man, the Twitterverse, they announced this the first morning, and the Twitterverse exploded, and everybody's very excited. I feel like I don't get it. Like, I feel like it's just a licensing bundle, and there might end up being a management page or something that makes it easier to manage all that. But, I mean, I don't feel like there's anything. This doesn't offer people anything that they couldn't buy a month ago or 2 months ago already, just with a more complicated thing.
Yeah, all I can figure is, we are pretty removed from the licensing as far as like, dealing with actual corporate licensing shenanigans these days. So maybe it really is that much of a change for those poor guys who do have to figure out how they're going to pay for 275, PCs and servers and Office cows and all that. So maybe it was a big deal, but I'm with you. There was nothing new that I saw, but I don't do licensing paperwork anymore. So
yeah. So that's out there. So if you're a company that license all those things, check out Microsoft 365. We'll see that. Another thing, and this came out a couple of weeks ago, but just kind of got bumped around in the notes. Microsoft is rolling out communication sites to Office 365 users, and I think we're past first release. I don't know if the regular tenants are getting it yet or not, but this is just kind of the next evolution of sites and all that in Office 365. They got these great dynamic pages that pull content in. My favorite piece: animated GIFs. So this is good stuff. You can really get your point across to the documents and the things inside of your SharePoint site. And so that's coming out for this audience, for admins. Something to keep track of. Your users are going to stumble across it. You're going to want to understand it before they find it first and start asking questions.
Yeah, well, it would be interesting. How's it going to change the branding story? Does it integrate with Design Master, or are you just supposed to accept whatever branding they give you on these? And I think there's a lot of that stuff that I still want to go and kind of poke the bear, and I just haven't had a chance to yet.
Yeah, and I thought I talked about this in an earlier podcast, but I might not have. And Blake in the chat room mentioned something about this, about being on first release. You and I have talked for a couple of years now about if you want to stay ahead of this stuff, you need to be in the first release. And at first, that just meant your tenant was in first release or not. And then Microsoft realized that didn't make a lot of sense, because sometimes you wanted to bring just a few people in. You didn't want to bring your whole tenant in. And so then they had, production release, first release tenant, or first release users. And you could do something like Azure IT department and kind of phase things out. I believe it's with the communication sites. There is a difference in when you get functionality, or different things come out, whether your tenant is in first release or a user is in first release. And I think the communication sites falls for this. So I think if your tenant is in first release, you do not get the communication sites right away. But if your tenant is set to be a regular tenant, but you have users in first release, then those users will get communication sites. And so I saw some discussions online about that. Man, is that tough to keep track of in your head, as to, because you're like, first release is first release, right? It should all just work. I'm guessing in the background, knowing the internals of SharePoint, like I think that I do, it's it's kind of like whether something gets exposed because an audience is exposed to it, or something gets exposed because a feature is turned on somewhere. I think it's kind of those kind of mechanical things that are working in the background. And so this makes me think that the communication sites are being rolled out like an audience, as opposed to a flip of a switch. So if you want to try these new communication sites out and your tenant is in first release and you don't see it yet, try adding users to first release and see if that does it.
You need to make one of those websites, kind of like your OneDrive website, right? Where you're like OneDrive, what OneDrive is it or whatever, right? There should be the same type of thing.
Which first release?
Yeah, what first release flowchart? I mean, really, that'd be a great thing for Microsoft to have, right? You go in, you type in a feature, and it kind of just shows where it's at in the pipe and how you got to there. But I'm guessing kind of like asking what the version number of SharePoint is, right? There's not going to be a clear answer to how you got here to there.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple folks in the chat room that are confirming that. Yeah, they have to have your users in first release. Your tenant in first release will not get you communication sites ahead of time. So very confusing. All right. So one last thing. Well, I got a couple things we want to talk about. We're getting close to the end here. Was poking around, answering some questions for folks last week, and stumbled across this. It's not necessarily new, but something I wanted to share. Microsoft has some PDF, XPS, whatever they are, PDFs to the rest of us, SharePoint 2016 architecture models that you can download. And I really like these. So it's a PDF, it's like 7 or 8 pages, but it covers all of the different types of scenarios that you might find yourself installing SharePoint 2016 under. So on-prem only, hybrid, online only, and just kind of talks about how all the pieces fit. It doesn't answer every question that some people have about how to set up SharePoint 2016, but it's a good starting spot. It's a good, this is the foundation. Okay, this part doesn't work. We're going to change this, but that's out on Microsoft.com. We'll put the link in the show notes. But just a good kind of gut check for setting up SharePoint Office 365 and all that.
Nope. Sometimes it's the best place to start, right? Just here's a clear picture of what the stories are and which story you should be following along until you decide you're a snowflake and none of these matter and fit you and you want to do your own thing. But
yeah. Yep. And the last thing we had was something you've got. I don't know if your dog will cooperate if we'll let you talk about it long enough. But this was something you got a couple of weeks ago. Tell the audience about it.
Yep. So there's my fancy little Disney circle. Got one of those about 2 weeks ago and got it up and running. Well, got it a long time ago. It took me that long to get it up and running. No, not really. The install is actually pretty easy, but it's a device for limiting your kids' access and time on the internet. And actually, it's for really your whole network, but yet it doesn't take a lot of setting up. So Todd and I are kind of trying to figure out how that worked, and Todd did some homework pretty fast and realized that I guess it's doing man-in-the-middle attacks. But I'm paying for a man-in-the-middle attack in my house. It's doing ARP spoofing.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically what this little box does, and you can hook it up on your Wi-Fi, or it also has an Ethernet adapter on it, but you just plug it into your network, and it it figures out where your gateway is. It does the DHCP thing, figures out where your default gateway is, and essentially uses ARP spoofing to hijack that address. And every device on your network will use this Disney Circle as its default gateway, whether it means to or not. And then you go in and you tell it, which devices have full access, which devices are the kids' devices that don't, times. I love the functionality. I love the control of it. A couple of things about it that I didn't like. The ARP spoofing, I don't like. I get that for everybody, that's not a big deal. Like my in-laws could install it, my parents could install it, my neighbors could install it, and it would be fine. For a guy like me who's up to his elbows playing with stuff, that kind of network shenanigans is the kind of thing that I would spend 4 hours trying to troubleshoot because something didn't work. And so that part bugs me a little bit. I get why they're doing it. I'm not ethically opposed to it, but it would bother me. Number two, the thing that I don't like about it is it either connects to your network via wireless, which means every piece of every internet traffic on your network goes over wireless twice, once from like your tablet to the circle, once from the circle to your, actually out and then back. Or it has an internet connection or an Ethernet connection, which is great because that's good. But the Ethernet connection is a 10100 connection. My internet connection is 200 megabit. So I'm immediately cutting my internet connection in half. And I can't get around it because it's using ARP spoofing. So I can't even say, the kids get slow internet, but I get the good stuff because it actually wedges itself in. So I like the idea. The executions, I'm not sold on the execution yet.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. So it has an app, right? Well, it has two apps. It has one as a management app that I use to kind of control the devices and the children profiles and all that. And it has another app I can put on their devices so they can kind of monitor themselves and see where they're at with their activities and stuff. But But it is interesting because, like you said, it wedges itself on its network. So like when my nanny, came plugged in, got on the network, she's like, hey, I can't get to some websites. I'm like, yeah, well, what are you trying to look at while you're at work, right? Because the internet was being filtered for her because I have the default, if a new device joins the network, you get the kids policy. So that way, it's always kind of a minimal policy. I do, as an adult, enjoy the fact that I have my devices set as unmonitored or unrestricted, whatever it is. But so it doesn't keep any data about my devices either.
Boy, are you lucky.
Well, it was because Nicola hopped on there, right? And she's like, let me see how long you've been on the internet today and what you've been up to. And it just says
Neener.
about me. Yeah. I'm waiting on her to put me in like an adult category that is monitored just so she can keep tabs on me.
Logged but not restricted.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been kind of fun. But it has things like bedtime. So, it automatically turns off at a certain bedtime, but it only turns the internet off. It's not turning their iPads off. So there is a little disconnect there. And then I know Lori's a big fan of Chore Monster, right? Chore Monster being the site or the app that you can use to assign your kids, you get 5 points for vacuuming the living room, you did it in there, then mommy approves it, then you get your 5 points. The app will integrate with Chore Monster as well, for example, so you can do rewards and, have metrics and kind of connections there. That stuff I think is still pretty new, but they're kind of working towards that model. There's also, you can do rewards pretty easy. So like if I want to increase bedtime, you can just literally press a button and push bedtime out, or you can also stop the internet. I'd probably really mess the show up, right? But I can literally just hop on here and go.
Yeah, please don't do that.
The internet. And the other upside here, I didn't figure out how they're doing it either. But so I was playing golf this morning instead of working. Shh, don't tell anybody. But that's when the nanny had the problem. And so I can still manage the devices and all that, even though I was not on the local network. So Circle is somehow, got an internet connection so I can manage it from afar.
Yeah.
So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know. No complaints so far.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that kind of thing. The couple of issues that I have with it would keep me from getting this revision of it. After you and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I reached out. I've got a couple other friends that have them. They love them, swear by them. They don't want to fiddle with things like I want to fiddle with things, and their internet connections aren't over 100 megabit, like yours isn't. So that's good stuff. So yeah, if you're looking for something, Disney Circle, I assume you got that at Amazon, where people get everything always.
Is there anywhere else to buy stuff these days? I'm confused. You go to Target to spend $200 on things you need right now, and you get everything else through Amazon. I don't.
Yep. And how much did this Disney Circle set you back?
$99.
Interesting.
Does that sound? You make small talk with the kids. And I'll check myself, but.
Yeah, so Blake in the chat room is talking about how his Linksys router has a lot of that built in. It's pretty common stuff. I use a router from Ubiquiti, and I have not looked lately to see if they've introduced something like that. But it's pretty common. Everybody's got 6 devices and 2.3 kids or whatever. So.
Yeah, and my router, so I have I have that crazy Nighthawk, it gives you cancer when you walk by it thing.
Yeah.
So it has some of this. Built in, but they use like OpenDNS and kind of the fold to do it. And so I set it up at one point just to try it out, and I blocked the wife from WebMD, so I didn't have any more of this. I've got cancer because my toenail itches. But I was not a big fan of the stuff that was on the router. It was a lot of work and didn't just work. Whereas literally, like you said, I plugged this thing in, I connected to it via a wireless access point it created. I told it how to get on my network, and I was done. Yeah. I didn't have to install anything on the kids' devices. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to go enable myself so I could get to those websites. But, it just worked without any effort.
Yeah. And so and we've talked about this before, I've got a thing running on a Raspberry Pi called Pi-hole that blocks ads. And it also works at the DNS level. But the problem with that is you can't differentiate between people. So... or not easily, depending on how you've got your network set up. So while that works great for malicious sites and all that, it doesn't work for this kind of thing very well.
Yeah, well, especially YouTube's really the biggest concern as a parent these days, because there's a lot of stuff on there that, your kid goes and watches a SpongeBob video. It's pretty innocent, but it can rabbit hole very fast into, SpongeBob becomes Dude Perfect becomes Sports Illustrated becomes Sports Illustrated swimsuit.
Yeah.
YouTube gets dark fast, so not a big fan of that. We switched to YouTube Kids a long time ago, which has really stopped all of that from happening. But now this also is supposed to be blocking YouTube, anything that's not kid-friendly or whatever that marking is that YouTube requires now.
Good. Yeah, good stuff. So if you've got some children or a spouse like Shane and you just want to make their internet suck for them, give the Disney Circle a chance.
And I wish they were sponsoring this or paying us to say this nice commercial for them.
Disney would not give us a dime. They would charge us for talking about it if they knew we were doing it.
They're probably going to sue us, right? We probably don't have the express written consent of the NFL to be writing about this.
And I don't want, we're all friends here, but I will be honest, I have discussed NFL games without the NFL's express written consent. I have done that.
You and your Kansas City Chiefs. I think I was party to it. I think I made the mistake of asking, so I feel like I might be.
Yeah, they're very clear about that. No descriptions of the game without the express written consent of the NFL, and I did it. I'm crazy like that. To hell with the NFL. I will do it.
Yeah, and training camp starts soon, so we're back in the NFL mode.
All right. Before we get down that rabbit hole, we should do one off about all that. Self-promotion. Shane and I, we talked about PowerShell. You and I, we PowerShell now and then. And we feel like it's just not fair to keep all this fun PowerShell to ourselves. And so we're doing a little PowerShell training class. Tell the kids about that training class.
Guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of the jury, you can spend 90 minutes with Todd and myself learning about PowerShell, right? If you're really intimidated about it, you're like, hey, the beginnings of PowerShell, how do I really get started and not run a bunch of scripts that someone gave me, but actually, learn to fish, right? Learn how these pieces work. We've got 2 classes for you, right? My first one starts with literally get-help, right? We start at the very, very, very beginning. And then Todd builds on top of that class with his 90-minute class. And his class talks about, a little bit further. Just kind of says, hey, here's a little bit more about variables. Here's a little bit more about the for loops or for each object loops. Here's a little bit about Azure AD to kind of get you wet your whistle. So, $99 for 90 minutes with one of us. It's a steal at half the price. So, wait a minute. It probably is right.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a lot of fun. You should come sign up and join us. That is August 3rd-ish.
I thought it was August 4th.
Uh-oh.
Oh, geez. Anyway, regardless, 3rd's a Thursday. You probably did it on Thursday. But so go to boldzebras.com/PowerShell training and sign up for that. Jeff Hicks is in the chat room. Jeff, you should sign up. I think we probably teach you a couple of things if you've got time on August 3rd. I think you gain a lot for this.
Yeah, can you imagine if Jeff had to sit through that? We'd have to time there, put toothpicks between his eyes to make him watch. He would cry.
I can't even imagine. And I know Jeff. He's a decent guy. He doesn't deserve that kind of torture. I wouldn't do it to him. So that's August. September, I'm going to the SharePoint Exchange Forum, SEF, out in Stockholm, Sweden. Doing a little cruise between Stockholm and Tallinn, Estonia. That's September 6th through the 9th. You can go to seforum.se to sign up for that if you're in Europe, or even if you're not in Europe. And I'll be talking, I can't remember if we've discussed which topics I'm going to be doing, Joran and I, but I think it's going to be Azure AD, PowerShell, Office 365, all the usual suspects. Great thing. If you've ever thought about going to Stockholm and not done it, shame on you. Stockholm was a great city. You should rush right out there. On another forum, on another internet thing, a friend of mine bought a Saab and did the European delivery and got that delivered in Stockholm. So he got this new car, or it was a Saab or a Volvo, I forget. But gets to spend a week in Stockholm, gets to drive his new car around. It's a great city. Love Stockholm. But sign up for that. I will be there. And then Microsoft Ignite is a couple weeks later. That's September 25th through the 29th. Not entirely sure what all is public about that, but I plan on being there at Ignite. You should come to Ignite. It's going to be a good time. You can go to I think it's ignite.microsoft.com and sign up for that. And then finally in November, I will be at the Thrive Conference in Slovenia.
At some point, we'll figure out when the Ignite stuff can actually be spoken of, right? You think at some point they'd want us to talk about it.
I don't know what you're talking about. But yes,
Exactly.
if there was something to talk about, I would love to talk about it. But I don't know. I've never, maybe I could. I don't know. Anywho, look at the time. Your dog has stopped barking, so I think it's probably time for us to stop the show.
I'm assuming he passed out. Just he barked so much he ran out of oxygen.
Hyperventilated, just collapsed. There's just a big pile of Chewy on your floor.
I can't imagine anything else happen. So, all right. Well, I guess let's call us a day. I'll go eat some Chick-fil-A. And call it a day.
All right. So thanks, everybody. Again, you can sign up for this. ToddClint.com/YouTube will take you to my YouTube channel. Hit us up on all the social media stuff, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Toodaloo.